we celebrated the fantastic achievements of the Scottish Parliament, but today did show us that having achieved 50-50 is not the end. It was a historic occasion, and it was so nice to see so many of the people here who were involved, because women's position is very fragile in many ways. And when we look at the figures of women now represented in Scottish Parliament, in our councils, we can see how far that's declined. So we have to fight back to reach our aim again. But 50-50 should also mean that we should be not looking for 50-50 simply in our political bodies, but throughout the organisations, throughout Scottish Government, throughout our local councils, our voluntary sector bodies. And I, as a voluntary sector chair, am very conscious that when I'm dealing with Scottish Government bodies, with all these bodies, all these kind of organisations, I'm a woman alone very often among men, and we have to campaign to get a real balance so that women's voices are heard when it comes to policy making.
So I'm involved in a new campaign group called Women 50-50. It's a group of MSPs across a number of different political parties that are all signed up to putting this into law to make it a legal requirement for political parties to field 50-50 candidates. We did a brilliant referendum, it reinvigorated women's interest in political issues. Now we've got to put that power to work and make sure our Parliament reflects the country it seeks to represent.
I absolutely loved the event, and I found it very emotional. So I did. The reason being, I feel like being a woman in IT, and throughout my career I've never felt any discrimination. I've always felt very being able to kind of grow as myself kind of thing, and I feel I appreciate the work that's went behind a lot of stuff that's happened through all the different political campaigns and what have you, and I feel that I'm benefiting from all the work that's been carried out over the years. So I'd like to say a thanks to all the campaigns, all the networks that's been on to make my life, basically make my life better in the workplace, certainly. I'm definitely seeing that.
I think it's been a splendid event, and I'm sure it's enthused a whole lot of women to rethink how they can once again claim 50-50 as their own.
What I really enjoyed was listening to the women politicians debate with such passion and yet without any acrimony, and the way they brought forward contrasting ideas you could think about without actually ripping each other's throats out. I thought that was wonderful, and I really enjoyed that. And it just goes to show that, you know, you can have a great debate without it being bland.
I'm going to go back to the community I come from in Greenock, and I'll be giving people all the ideas which were spoken today by the excellent speakers, and inspire them and ask them to get involved and work for 50-50.
It should have happened years ago. I did get involved in 1989, so I've been around a while trying to get...
What did you do in 1989?
I was a local elected councillor on a local authority in 1988 at district level, and they didn't have any women, and I was lucky enough to be selected and voted in, so we've been fighting for this for a long time. So
I think the Scottish Parliament, when it first came into being, it was refreshing to see so many women in the Parliament. A bit disappointed that some of the debates are a bit like reminiscent of Parliament, but I think that there's a possibility that that could change.
There was a woman who spoke today, Jane Mackay, presented an article from the Scotsman in 1994 where they were calling for 50-50. I recognised a lot of names on it, but I was in school when that article came out, so it made me feel very grateful for all the women that came before me, and I felt a huge amount of responsibility for all the women that will come after me as well. So we've made a lot of progress, but there's still a huge amount of work to do.
if they're there to represent the constituencies, they're all 52% actually women and 50% 48 are men, then it should be 50-50.
Well, I think it's essential. It's not just about women's positions. It's not about a woman getting to the top. It's about taking forward the agenda that affects women to make women as equal as men.
50-50 representation is hugely important, and not just for political parties but throughout our boardrooms as well. I think it's hugely important within the Scottish Parliament. You'll find not very often that even within committees or even within meetings that you go to attend, there's never 50-50. Sometimes, well, most times I often feel that I'm the only woman in the room, and that is often the case, yes.
Particularly my own company, Network Rail, they are now, with a new CEO, Mark Carn, is into diversity and inclusion. And they've now set up 5 networks, one of them being for women, so yes.
I was very struck by Angela Constance's point about the media having such a huge impact on politics, both on what's covered and also the way that that women politicians are covered. I think she was absolutely spot on about that, and that we need to reclaim the media. I think we have great opportunities now using social media to ensure that, you know, what some rather biased tabloid says is not the last word or the only word. And I think that we have to look outside the spheres of journalism, you know, to get our stories heard. For example, designers can tell stories, artists can tell stories. I'm a designer. I know the impact that we can make on having women's issues understood. And I think really this problem about how we represent our story, how Scottish Women's Convention represents its story, is absolutely critical to its success.
Because it's so important that women's voices are heard, and women have a different attitudes to politics and a different way of engaging with the political system. And if we don't have this, then you don't hear it. It creates too much dominance of the views of men, and it is much too confrontational.
But I think it takes more than the political parties. I think there has to be legislation, just like there should have been legislation on equal pay, and thousands of women would have benefited by that years ago. But yes, they should do their job. The show should be